Steak Diane is a mid-20th century Anglo-American fancy restaurant food that was often prepared tableside. It is now about as passé as a dish can get, but hey, let's see if we can't make it cool again. First thing we'll need is like half a pound, 225 grams of mushrooms. I'll trim off the woody end of the stem and then slice.
Watch your fingers.
Okay. Oh!
Slices lay better than chunks on the surface of the steak. It makes it easier for you to get some mushroom in every bite of beef. But if you really hate mushrooms, just leave them out. Throw those in a bowl for later. Now I just got to peel and mince a shallot and a few cloves of garlic. This might seem like a lot, but it's for my steak sauce and for my vegetable side, which is going to be broiled asparagus. Cut off the woody lower third there, and I'm all about using my new mini sheet pans for everything. So convenient because they fit in the dishwasher. Some garlic and shallots on there, along with the asparagus, salt, pepper, and a little olive oil to coat everything. And the secret ingredient is lemon zest. This stuff makes asparagus taste so good and fresh and bright. Toss those all to get every strand coated and try to arrange them in as thin and even of a layer as possible. Set those aside for now. Only other prep we have to do is the meat. I've got 2 New York strip steaks, about half a pound each. Brits would call it a sirloin. Not my favorite cut of beef at all, but it is often used for steak Diane, as is tenderloin if you have deeper pockets. You just want a tender steak. It doesn't need to be particularly flavorful or juicy because it's going to be smothered in sauce. But that is the same reason why I am trimming off those bands of fat and connective tissue, and maybe here, that gristly seam separating those 2 muscles, I'll just cut the smaller muscle off and save it for a Scooby snack. The steak will be smothered in sauce, and so you won't be able to see any big chunks of gristle or fat as you eat, and therefore you won't be able to avoid them. For steak Diane, I want perfectly clean, clear steaks. Traditionally, you'd pound them flat, but that tradition has fallen by the wayside for a reason. It does almost nothing to tenderize meat. It just makes it harder to get a steak that's brown on the outside and pink on the inside. Enough salt and pepper and oil to coat every surface, toss, and into a very hot pan that I've had over high flame for a while. It's just like cooking any other steak. You have to rush to brown the outside before the inside overcooks. That's why you need aggressive heat and a good pan that is thick and heavy so that it doesn't cool the second you drop a steak into it. This excellent 10-inch stainless steel pan is from Made In, sponsor of this video. Made In designs pro-quality products for the home cook. They're used in multiple 3 Michelin star restaurants like Alinea in Chicago and Le Bernardin in New York. Made In partners with multi-generational factories and artisans across Europe and the US to bring you a curated collection of materials and shapes you need in the kitchen. Look at that big chunky oven-safe handle. It stays remarkably cool on the stovetop. The first cooking vessel I would buy is a big Dutch oven, but the second is a 10-inch stainless steel pan. Stainless is simply the easiest material to care for, and underneath, Made In has 5 layers of different materials for rapid, even heating, and the curvature of the walls is calculated for deeper searing and easier flipping, while a rolled rim allows you to pour sauces without spilling. Check out Made In's whole line of stainless steel cookware and use my link in the description for 15% off your first purchase. Get 15% off Made In with my link in the description. Thank you, Made In. Don't worry about getting the best crust ever on these steaks. They're going to be covered in sauce, and you don't want to scorch the brown stuff in the pan because it's going to dissolve into our sauce later. Now, when I see pink juice starting to push to the surface of the steak, that's a great indication that we're approaching medium rare. When in doubt, take the steak out, because it's going to cook a little more in the sauce. I might as well leave those scraps in there to flavor the sauce. In goes the mushrooms to brown a little, and it looks like I'm going to need a little more oil for them. You only have a second to brown mushrooms before they release so much water that browning becomes impossible, so I got to really go for it. Once there's a little color on them, I'll drop in my remaining shallots and garlic and also a squeeze of tomato paste. Stir all that in to let it brown for a minute. The tomato gives a ton of flavor to the sauce, then really distinguishes it from steak au poivre, which is a very similar dish. When I can see that my individual shallot pieces are brown, I will turn off the flame before I deglaze with cognac or any other brown liquor. Skip it if you want. This is when, traditionally, they'd turn the flame back on to ignite the alcohol. Flambe does basically nothing for the food, it just looks cool, and remember, this was traditionally prepared tableside. When the cognac is reduced to almost a glaze, that tells me that most of the booze has evaporated because mostly everything has evaporated. Now I can grab one of these handy mini carbonated cartons of stock and pour that in. I love the mini cartons for sauce making. I just don't need any more. And the two other very traditional ingredients would be a big splash of Worcestershire sauce. It's very salty, so go easy. You can always add more to taste at the end. As much Dijon mustard as you want. If I didn't use this much, I'd put in some of the juice from that lemon we used earlier, but I like a lot of Dijon, and Dijon is plenty sour on its own. Now is a good time to throw that asparagus under the broiler, the super hot top element. It gets the asparagus deliciously brown, but you can use any very hot oven setting. I want to reduce this sauce au sec, almost dry, so that when I put in my cream, I don't have to risk overcooking the cream while I reduce this down to a sticky consistency. I want to start with it at a sticky consistency, and there it is. I'll pull out those scraps, their job is done, and then it's really as much cream as you want. I'll start with that much and then maybe add some more later based on how the sauce is looking. Finishing a sauce with cream is much easier than finishing a sauce with butter. You don't have to worry so much about overcooking the cream and breaking its natural emulsion. In fact, you need to boil the cream a little to make it thicken. Just stir frequently and simmer it into the consistency that you like. I'll take a little more cream here. That sauce is going to thicken more as it cools. Taste for seasoning, and it should be a little too salty and otherwise too strong on its own. In goes all the resting juices from the steaks, along with the steaks themselves. They're quite cold at this point. The aim now is to gently reheat them while they merge with the sauce a little bit. Be careful to not cook them too much, just a couple of minutes in there. Tear in some fresh parsley at the very end. Parsley was the garnish of choice back in the heyday of Steak Diane. Drop that steak on a plate. The asparagus is done when it's as floppy as you want it. This is just a little overcooked to my taste, but still really good. Smother on some additional sauce at the last minute and go to town. I usually pre-slice steaks that I make at home, but there's something delightfully retro about breaking out the steak knives for a whole steak, and I associate that style of service with the era of Steak Diane. Perfectly pink at the center, told you so, and again, that strip is not the best steak in the world, but it doesn't have to be because it's covered in this insanely delicious sauce that goes every bit as well on the asparagus. Happy retro dinner night.